Episode 56 HA August 8, 2023. In 1988 the EPA revived the use of wood stoves. In 1989 Dr. Fauci's AIDS parallel track began. Photo of Peter Staley during an ACT UP protest outside the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, headquarters in 1988. In 1988 the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, revived the use of wood stoves, long relegated to the past, 35 years ago, beginning the certification of indoor residential wood stoves as a safe method of home heating. Was this a cynical bone to throw to the wood stove industry, a wink to the marketers of wood stoves that the public was gullible enough to believe that smoke spewing could be viewed as good for the environment if it came in the natural package of wood, rather than fossil fuels? It is incomprehensible today to near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners, that this could ever have fooled anyone near to the emissions of any wood stove. We could linger on this 1988 EPA decision, but the point of the adverse health effects on near neighbors of indoor residential wood stoves has been made countless times. Nothing is changing soon in the certification of wood stoves until 2027, if appearances are reality. The EPA is stonewalling. In 2023, in one response to the 10 assistant attorney generals threatening to sue if the EPA does not change new source performance standards, NSPS, for indoor residential wood stoves every 8 years, on schedule in 2023, the NSPS were last changed in 2015, the EPA stated that changes could not possibly come until 2027, 12 years after the 2015 changes. What will happen at the end of August when the 10 assistant attorney generals make good on their threat and sue the EPA to make changes that the EPA is already obligated to make? Do court fights resolve issues quickly and always in the interest of human health over corporate profits? Stay tuned, and cross your fingers, suckers. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates are often homeowners. Near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners who suffer from the health effects of wood burning emissions would sell their home and move if it was economically viable, or current homeowners would just start renting in a different location if that made any economic sense. But near neighbors' homes are the weighty anchor dragging them down if they live near an indoor residential wood burner, or their homes could be solace in a harsh world if homeowners are allowed to breathe freely. But that dream of no wood smoke in their own backyards is just out of reach. Near neighbors of indoor residential wood stove burners don't have PACs and are not influential. Their words are used to protect them, and that amounts to very little. Take note, and cackle to yourselves like evil cartoon villains, indoor residential wood stove users. When viewing the PBS documentary about Dr. Anthony Fauci yesterday, this RAWSEP editor was struck by the solution that a government official, Dr. Fauci, felt compelled to offer AIDS activists, the parallel track, offered beginning in 1989, a year after the U.S. government, by certifying wood stoves as safe for home heating in 1988, began the slow slog of taking away the future right to breathe for many of its citizens. Dr. Fauci's solution for AIDS activists was called Parallel Track, and Fauci ran the idea past John Sununu, Chief of Staff for U.S. President George H.W. Bush, Bush Sr., and with President Bush's approval in place, Fauci was able to push Parallel Track right through in 1989. Since 1984, from the age of 44, Dr. Fauci served as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, at the National Institutes of Health, a role Fauci held until stepping down in December 2022. Since 1989, the NIAID agency's Parallel Track Policy, 57 FR 13250, permits wider access to promising new drugs for AIDS/HIV-related diseases under a separate expanded access protocol that parallels the controlled clinical trials that are essential to establish the safety and effectiveness of new drugs. Controlled clinical trials are conducted parallel to allowing use of AIDS drugs outside of clinical trials when it makes no sense from a healthcare perspective to deny use of potentially life-saving drugs just to adhere to the traditional FDA rules of clinical trials. In 2023, traditional and even outdated methods of certification of wood stoves as safe continue and will continue using the same methods and limits even to 2027, if the EPA response to the 10 assistant attorney generals is unchanged. In 1989, the FDA did not change its general rules about clinical trials, and the FDA's general rules about clinical trials had a scientific basis, unlike the political basis for the EPA beginning to certify wood stove use as safe. In 2023, the opening salvo was the Office of the Inspector General, watchdog of the EPA, announcing in February 2023 that EPA certification of wood stoves was a deeply flawed program and resulted in many or most wood stoves which were certified safe being non-compliant with certification regulations, and so many or most of wood stoves being manufactured and sold since 1988 up to 2023 were highly polluting and actually unsafe. Burning of any solid fuel is highly polluting. Wood burning emits more CO2 and PM2.5 than the fossil fuel coal burning. Wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5, particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, producing adverse health problems and early deaths for near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. Would it require running it by the president to establish a parallel track of 1, mitigating the PM2.5 related adverse health effects and PM2.5 caused early deaths from being a near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner, while 2. Tolerating the slow walking of changes to EPA certification of indoor residential wood stoves that EPA threatens will take until 2027? How could the PM2.5 adverse health effects caused by being a near neighbor of an indoor wood burner be mitigated, even if, in a worst-case scenario, such a method has to be used alongside wood stove certification? There could be a federal government-down complaint-based system of regulating and shutting down indoor residential wood burning that results in violation of National Ambient Air Quality Standards, NOx, for PM2.5 in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. In 2023 we have the technology to provide evidence of PM2.5 above NOx limits, 35 micrograms per cubic meter daily or 12 micrograms per cubic meter annually, or the World Health Organization standard of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually. These PM2.5 monitor methods of measuring air pollution above safe limits are already in place in the United States. Low-cost $249 Purple Air PM2.5 monitors are already used on US EPA AirNow maps of smoke and fire, alongside $100,000 EPA PM2.5 monitors, correlated to $100,000 monitors with a simple mathematical formula. These maps of smoke and fire already in the last 2 months have given valuable information to the millions of United States residents inundated with Canadian wildfire smoke, to help ordinary U.S. citizens deal with the Canadian wildfire wood smoke PM2.5 emissions by staying inside and running air purifiers. This is no way to live, especially since Americans were just feeling free to walk outdoors and resume normal activities after receiving life-saving COVID vaccinations. But that is the way near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners have been living for years, sealing their homes and staying inside with air purifiers, rather than being able to walk outside in their backyards without having to confront hazardous air pollution in the form of unnecessarily generated wood smoke from indoor residential wood burners next door. In the PBS Masterpiece documentary on Dr. Fauci, Fauci says the catalyst for his actions in requesting parallel track from President Bush Sr. in 1989 was a young man who wanted to continue taking the azithromycin, also called zidovudine, AZT, that was keeping him alive during a clinical trial. But the same young man was denied use of another drug, ganciclovir, that would keep him from going blind, if he continued the AZT clinical trial and adhered strictly to the rules of clinical trials. Parallel track allowed the young man with AIDS to take both drugs. With parallel track, the young man did not have to choose between early death or blindness. At the least, near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners should be able to file a complaint about the wood smoke pollution in their own backyards and receive relief in the form of the wood burner either stopping burning or having the wood burner shut down. Or the certification of the wood stove could be revoked on a case-by-case basis, using evidence that the wood stove violated NOx limits in the ambient air as far away from the wood stove stack as the yard of the near neighbor. If that complaint-based system track, using scientific measurement of harm to human health, has to continue alongside the track of wood stove certification continuing on its merry way until 2027, so be it, because mitigating the health adverse effects on near neighbors of indoor residential wood burning could still be achieved. https://www.pbs.org/video/Tony-a--year-Anthony-Fauci-CJ https://www.newyorktimes.com/2022/12/opinion/Anthony-Fauci-HIV-AIDS-act-up.html Anthony Fauci quietly shocked us all. December 31, 2022. Dr. Fauci meeting with ACT UP members at New York City's LGBT Center in October 1989. From left, Peter Staley, Jay Funk, Mark Harrington, Simon Watney, Peggy Hamburg, the Assistant Director of NIID, Anthony Fauci, Richard Alovich, and Charlie Franchino. By Peter Staley. Mr. Staley is a political activist and was an early member of ACT UP. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The first time I met Dr. Anthony Fauci was at the International AIDS Conference in Montreal during the summer of 1989. ACT UP was the AIDS activist group I was a part of. Dr. Fauci, who was leading the response at the National Institutes of Health, had been meeting with members of ACT UP since shortly after our founding 2 years earlier, in 1987. The regular meetings he had was with an ACT UP member, Bill Ballman. There Dr. Fauci was, meeting with me and my comrades, to discuss our policy proposal for upending long-standing Food and Drug Administration strictures against public access to drugs before they are approved. I couldn't shake the feeling that as the head of our government's AIDS research efforts, Dr. Fauci had my life in his hands. Only 4 years earlier, at the age of 24, I was diagnosed with AIDS-related complex, considered a certain death sentence at the time. Days after the conference, I found myself in Dr. Fauci's office, along with the ACT UP members Mark Harrington and Jim Igo, hammering out the final details of our parallel track program, which would allow thousands of people to obtain experimental drugs outside of traditional clinical trials. Within days, a New York Times front page headline about Dr. Fauci read, AIDS researcher seeks wide access to drugs and tests. The FDA quickly fell in line. ACT UP had scored its first major victory, with Dr. Fauci's help. During an ACT UP protest a few months later on another AIDS issue, Dr. Fauci asked Peter, "Are you all right?" Laughing, I replied, "I'm fine. Just doing my job. How about you, Tony?" Photograph of Peter Staley during a protest at the Food and Drug Administration's headquarters in Maryland in 1988. RAWSEP view. Those who do not live in a community that agrees on using clean energy need to stop the indoor residential wood burning in their community in the interest of protecting human health. On the other hand, a community that all agrees on using clean energy can even agree to create their own microgrid. https://www.newyorktimes.com/2023/08/07/real estate/microgrid-solar-power-energy.html. Microgrids are giving power to the people. Around the country, developers are building energy-resilient communities that act as their own miniature power grids. Heron's Nest, a microgrid community in Charlotte, North Carolina, near the Atlantic coast, gives its residents the security of knowing that there will always be backup power in every home. August 7, 2023. As retirement neared, Eric and Camilla Mulder decided to downsize from their 4-bedroom home in West Grove, Pennsylvania. They had 2 main goals: find a place near the beach, and reduce their living expenses. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity, and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. Heron's Nest, in Charlotte, North Carolina, a development, calling itself an environmental village, is homes between $300,000 to $400,000. Each house comes with a 3-kilowatt rooftop solar system, which reduces carbon footprints and cuts utility bills by a third. It is North Carolina's first residential microgrid development. Each home at Heron's Nest is equipped with solar panels to offset energy costs in the microgrid community. A microgrid is a network of buildings that essentially acts as a miniature power grid. It can operate outside of the larger municipal electrical system by ensuring backup power for the entire development, which can be produced by a solar array system and stored in a battery. The rooftop solar and the sense of security we got knowing that you'd have power during a storm sealed the deal for us, said one couple, who paid in the low $200,000 for their 1,350 square foot, 3-bedroom home in July 2022. The U.S. Energy Department estimated that there were more than 450 operational microgrids in the United States in 2022. The 31 homes at Heron's Nest have sold quickly. It was easy to explain to buyers how rooftop solar panels, included in the price of each home, could lower a utility bill, and how the microgrid would generate power when residents most needed it. The first resident moved into Heron's Nest about 5 years ago, and the 54 people who live there now are a mix of retirees and first-time buyers. In Menifee, California, the home building company KB Home is developing a microgrid with more than 200 houses that come with a heat pump, electric appliances, solar panels, a battery, and a shared community battery system. With California now mandating that most new homes include solar panels, this neighborhood 80 miles southeast of Los Angeles is a test case to see how large-scale communities can be built to be energy resilient, while reducing carbon emissions and lowering energy costs. Here, the homes, priced from $490,000 to $610,000, will use Schneider Electric Square D power equipment, which includes a smart electrical panel, connected switches and outlets, and a phone app that will calculate when and how much power customers use from each appliance. Homes will also be wired to incorporate electric vehicle charging stations, and eventually could be equipped with vehicle-to-home charging stations, allowing residents to pump the power stored in their car battery back into their house. For this development, SunPower, a solar energy services provider, obtained a $6.65 million grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to help build the community battery storage system. The residents will lease their rooftop solar systems and smart electrical panels, and enter a power purchase agreement with SunPower to lower their utility bills. While residents can feel secure knowing they are generating and storing power, a microgrid also eases the burden on the local utility, because it can disconnect from the larger grid during a period of overload like a record-breaking heat wave. Microgrids are developing energy-efficient homes and communities that help the local power grid is the next venture of energy independence. Not every energy-resilient community is classified as a microgrid. Babcock Ranch, a development about 15 miles northeast of Fort Myers, Florida, calls itself the nation's first solar-powered town. It includes an 870-acre solar farm to power the community. Unlike a microgrid, it doesn't have enough battery power to back up the entire development. But it does have an 870-acre solar farm to power the community, including 2 solar array systems totaling 150 megawatts of capacity, a transmission substation, with another being built, and a 10-megawatt battery storage system. The development, which opened in 2018, is massive. A real estate investor raised $700 million in capital to buy 92,000 acres of land more than a decade ago. He then sold 80% of the land to the state of Florida and Lee County for a total of $350 million, retaining 18,000 acres to build Babcock Ranch. Babcock Ranch currently has about 6,000 residents living in about 3,000 units. By completion, the population is expected to grow to 50,000 in about 19,500 residential units. In the fall of 2022, as Hurricane Ian barreled toward Fort Myers, a Babcock Ranch resident helped his elderly parents and his daughter, then a college senior, take cover at his home which he bought in 2020 with his wife. More than 2 million Floridians lost power when Ian made landfall, but not one home went dark in Babcock Ranch. There's a reason why they call this place the bubble. New homes are still being developed at Babcock Ranch to meet rising demand for energy-resilient properties. Residents at Babcock Ranch don't get a discount on their utility bills, so many residents have installed their own rooftop solar systems. One resident said his monthly bill was about $300 before installing panels on his home a few months ago. Now it's about $110. In the suburbs of San Diego, Sonnen Incorporated, a solar battery and software maker, and solar installer Baker Electric Home Energy, have formed a virtual power plant (VPP) community, so far with about 200 homes, where owners can sell their solar energy directly back to the California Independent System Operator. A VPP comprises a group of small-scale power producers that are aggregated to help alleviate grid load and stem power outages. Here, residents have been able to lower their bills by about 15% and will receive a yearly check between $150 and $300. Reducing utility bills, along with carbon emissions, is great, but for some, living in a microgrid is all about the security of a reliable energy source. Emails of 10 assistant attorney generals preparing to sue the EPA to provide clarity for indoor residential wood stove manufacturers, vendors, and users. Instead, the Assistant Attorneys General should ask for a complaint-based system in place of the failed wood stove certification program. The states involved are Alaska, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington, as well as the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. Contact emails for the 10 assistant or deputy attorney generals and a general counsel are Cody.doig@alaska.gov Alaska Senior Assistant Attorney General Email, Cody Doig. Jason.James@ilag.gov Illinois Assistant Attorney General Email, Jason James. Goldstein@oag.state.md.us Maryland Special Assistant Attorney General Email, Stephen Goldstein. Turner.Smith@mass.gov Massachusetts Assistant Attorney General Email, Turner Smith. Peter.Serto@ag.state.mn.us Minnesota Special Assistant Attorney General Email, Peter Serto. Lisa.Morelli@law.njoag.gov New Jersey Deputy Attorney General Email, Lisa Morelli. Nicholas.Batino@ag.newyork.gov New York Assistant Attorney General Email, Nicholas Batino. Paul.Garahan@doj.state.or.us Oregon Attorney in Charge Email, Paul Garahan, one of 2 or attorneys. Steve.Novick@doj.state.or.us Oregon Special Assistant Attorney General Email, Steve Novick, one of 2 or attorneys. Nick.Persimpieri@vermont.gov Vermont Assistant Attorney General Email, Nick Persimpieri. Caroline.Kress@atg.wa.gov Washington Assistant Attorney General Email, Caroline Kress. Jennifer.Cleanair.gov General Counsel, Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, Jennifer A. Dold. A new icon has been added to the RAWSEP President's website, which is now the nearest right icon. The icon is an ask that has already been described in episodes 56 GB, description of the parties who should be at the table when deciding on safe wood stove emission limits and fenceline measurements, rather than wood stove certification, and emails to contact 10 deputy or assistant attorney generals and 1 general counsel. Those PDFs are included at the icon link. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, see https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com and click on the nearest right icon for the ask. Contact 10 Attorneys General https://rawscpresident.wordpress.com/ Please contact Attorneys General about August suit versus EPA asking for certainty for wood stove users. RAWSEP asks for complaint-based SITM based on PM monitor data exceeding EP/. To the right of that, Barbie goes to the dating game https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com. 1 Barbie goes to the dating game / to the right of that, cookies that may contain rocks are recalled https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com/ cookies that may contain rocks are recalled to the right of that, the fox owns the forest card game. https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com/ the fox owns the forest card game TBA. Then to the right of that, the latest months, August and July 2023, of PDFs of articles with URLs to search on https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com/ 1-August-2023-PDFs-of-URLs. And https://rawscpresidents.wordpress.com/ 1-July-2023-PDFs-of-URLs. To the right of that, stickers to hand out for RAWSEP, games such as 1. Bingo for RAWSEP, 2. Crosswords for RAWSEP 3, End Wood Smoke Jeopardy 4, PM2.5 Free Monopoly and End Wood Smoke Monopoly 5, vending machines for PM2.5 monitors, and icon links to 30-minute YouTube videos and Spotify podcasts as well as podcasts.google.com, CastBox and Pocket Cast. Pocket Cast is only free on the phone app, Pocket Cast works on Apple phones, and, below those icons, icon links to monthly URLs of PDFs from June 2023 to May 2022.